This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations, a show about creativity, innovation, and design. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. This week, we're actually recording from Sunnyvale, California. I'm out here just having completed teaching the Innovation Bootcamp course. This is a 5-day course I teach out in Silicon Valley, bring individuals out here to kind of have a Silicon Valley experience, but also to really have a 5-day, very intense effort of how do you go from developing a raw idea to how you commercialize that. So if you happen to be interested in that, just follow us over at killerinnovations.com. I'll post some notices over there for upcoming courses. I think the next one will be probably sometime in October. So in the meantime, I've invited Kim McNicholas back onto the show. Kim now, I think, has the record of being the most repeated guest on Killer Innovations.
I love it.
Over the years. And so with that, Kim, welcome back.
Thank you.
You've just been off traveling this week. You're about as busy as I am looking at all new kinds of companies and technologies out there.
And this one was really interesting simply because it was history in the making in terms of medical breakthroughs in cardiology treatments. And it was exciting to be in the room when these surgical procedures were happening and a brand new laser treatment for unclogging arteries was being studied for the first time in the U.S. It's an FDA-approved study, and it was happening, and I got to be there to watch these successful patients.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because I was watching you on Facebook, and you were doing the teaser thing of, oh, man, I'm in the middle of this thing, but I can't tell you what it is, but boy, is it cool. And I never think of you as really being a medical geek, but you've turned into one just in 1 week.
I have, because when I was running the Extreme Tech Challenge, which is the world's largest startup competition, we're the top 10% live at the world's largest consumer electronics show in Las Vegas. And the top 3 go on to present to, of course, Sir Richard Branson on his private island. In this past year, we've had a lot of companies in the medical space, especially in the wearable space. Bloom Technologies, which creates a prenatal technology to help women know in their 3rd trimester whether or not they should head to the hospital for the contractions they're having or whether they can actually wait. So Bloom Technologies ended up winning this year, and that sparked my fascination in medical innovations. And then fast forward, because of that, I think the universe sometimes works in mysterious ways. When you start focusing on a particular area, everything starts coming your way. You start seeing more things in that area. And it turns out a really good friend of mine that I've known since 1993, I ended up meeting. His name is Dean Irwin. He is the co-founder of a company called Raw Medical. He used to come into the restaurant that I was working at, and he would sit in the bar and have his beefeater martini, and he'd be drawing on his lasers that he was creating on bar napkins. And that's where he did his best thinking and creating. Okay, this is too much of a stereotype. I go to a bar and I'm sketching on a napkin, and that's where the idea and the innovations come from. The old school way,
yeah,
right?
The old school way. Well, here in Silicon Valley, for me, it was St. John's over on Lawrence Expressway with the burger place. You know, that was the hangout if you were in the 80s. With any of the startups, you always hung out at St. John's over on Lawrence Expressway. So I guess the stereotype is alive and well.
It is the long-time innovators. I think that's where a lot of them started, was in a bar, sitting with their whiskey or their martini and drawing on napkins. But it's really proved successful for him because he's developed, I don't know if you're familiar with the excimer laser. The excimer laser is what's used for LASIK surgery. And it is very precise, but this excimer laser with a longer wavelength, they use, I'm still learning a little bit about this. So they use UVB, waves, the ultraviolet light, in order to resolve dermatological issues such as vitiligo, what Michael Jackson had with the skin discolorations. They can actually send it with these lasers into remission. Same thing with psoriasis. They can send psoriasis into remission with these excimer lasers, and it's pretty amazing. And then he's gone on to now create an arterial laser, still the excimer laser, which unclogs arteries. And they had the trials in Mexico, very successful there. And they just started with their FDA-approved clinical study here in the U.S.
Okay, now I'm impressed. You go hang out for 5 days and with surgeons. And if you don't follow Kim on Facebook, you should go over and follow her on Facebook, because she snapped a picture of herself this week in full scrubs.
I totally was. And the lead.
And the purple lead. Very stylish, though. It was very stylish.
It was fun because I didn't realize. So there's something called an interventional cardiologist. And I had never heard of that before. And they're beyond the cardiologist. So the cardiologist realizes that someone has peripheral artery disease or some cardiac issue, but then they need to go into diagnostics. Because maybe, for example, with peripheral artery disease, you can have a clogged artery and your foot turns black, or you end up with ulcers on your foot. And so they send you to an interventional cardiologist, and the interventional cardiologist goes in and they try and unclog the artery. If they can't unclog the artery, they send you to amputation. And it's pretty sad, the high rate of amputation in this country for people with peripheral artery disease. And that's what this technology is geared towards. And there are a number of them out there that do that. But I got to be there in the room and wear the scrubs, and I had the lead on, because there are very few women in this field as interventional cardiologists, because they have the X-ray going the entire time for diagnostics, which is interesting. Ooh. So 99% women are interventional cardiologists. Because of that, you have to wear lead inside this room the entire time. And there's Dr. John Thompson, thinking, oh goodness, I have to go back and look up his name. Anyway, he is supposedly the pioneer in this space, and he's created a technology, the Avenger, which has digital imaging that's attached to their technology, which is geared towards unclogging arteries. And that could actually, because of that technology, that could increase the number of women in the space, because it reduces the need for the overall X-ray.
So you basically sat in a room, got lit up by X-rays
yes.
through this whole
for an entire day.
For an entire day.
But I had the lead on.
You had the lead on. But it was quite funny watching the Facebook pictures coming across while you were gone this week, all dressed up in your scrubs.
I think I have the best job in the whole world.
Well, it's actually interesting, because in the case of your job, coming from Forbes, going to Pando, now it really is what I would classify as an independent journalist out there, helping companies, helping find companies that are doing interesting things for your radio show and coming on to Killer Innovations, but also helping companies themselves tell the story. Right. I don't know about you, but, having been doing this show for, now 12 years, and you were at Forbes as a journalist, I was at Forbes as a contributor. One of the things that I find is how few companies can actually tell their story.
It's very few and far between. And some of them have a story that's so easy to tell, but there are very few of those as well. Yeah.
And it's, and I know I get into, when I do my coaching and mentoring, about helping companies, try to weave that story, or how to think differently about their businesses. And I know in the case of the Extreme Tech Challenge, you've come across companies with amazing technologies, but you have to almost pull it out of some of these companies to really unwrap it and unpack it.
And not every company is like Sphero, the company that the app-enabled robot that created the BB-8 from Star Wars, that little robot. I mean, not everyone has that sort of luck. They walk into Techstars Disney or Disney Techstars, and they suddenly get to meet the president of Disney, who says, it's a little ironic that your little toy resembles our new robot in the Star Wars movie. I mean, that makes it a very easy story to tell.
Well, it's not like having, Disney and J.J. Abrams and all that get to tell your story.
Exactly.
Can I get J.J. Abrams to tell my story? That's what I want. I want Abrams telling my story.
The toys sell themselves at that point.
Exactly. All you have to do is just manufacture them and get them on the shelf. You let the movie tell the story.
Right.
It's pretty crazy. So actually, we're going to just take a little bit of a commercial break here in a second. But when we come back, I want to pick up Kim and talk a little bit more about the coaching and mentoring. You do a lot of it. I do a fair amount about it, advising companies. But I think there's still some confusion on what the difference between what is a coach, what is a mentor, what makes a good coach and a mentor, and then how do I go find one? Now, I'm a big believer in a mentor. I had an early mentor when I first got out of school, my first job, Bob Davis, and he had just an absolutely unbelievable impact on my career going forward. He's now retired. He's a school bus driver in Arizona, of all things, and he loves what he does. But without him, my career would have gone in a completely different direction than where it ended up. So when we come back, I want to talk specifically about that coach, the mentoring. What does that really mean? How do you go find them? How do you go find good ones? And how do you really take advantage of that? So stay right there, and we'll be right back after this commercial break.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back. This is Killer Innovations, a show about innovation, creativity, and design. This is your host, Phil McKinney, with our special guest, Kim McNicholas. So in the first segment, we got off a little bit on the medical topic.
We always seem to go off on tangents, don't we?
Yeah, this is, we never follow a script.
We don't even have one.
We don't even have a script this week. But we're ending the last segment talking about coaching and mentoring. Mm-hmm. You do a fair amount of it. I do a fair amount of it. It's one of those questions I get a lot of, which is, what's the difference between coaching and mentoring? And is there a difference between coaching and mentoring? And then how do I go find one? Now, you actually have a coach.
I do. And now I'm wondering if she's more of a mentor than a coach. But she is amazing. I've been through so many different coaches, so many different mentors. I think maybe you better tell me the difference between a mentor and a coach before I tell you whether she's a mentor or a coach and all this people I've gone through, if they were mentors or coaches. But what I've really discovered, it's so important to find someone that you feel aligned with and really speaks to your inner truth and really speaks to how you think and how you believe before you move forward with them. Just because a coach works with someone else doesn't mean that they work for you. And with Christine Meyer, she's with Christine Meyer Coaching. She's in a small town in Pennsylvania. But wow, the way that she can get me to think in a way that's creative and bring out that inner truth. I mean, I'm so inspired right afterwards to write, I'm so incredibly productive, but no one's been able to do that before. And I'm thinking in a way that I never thought I could. That feels so right.
I think what you're pointing at, though, is that when you're looking at coaching and mentoring, it is about finding the right person. It's not a one size fits all. Yeah. And, here's a 5-step process and everybody, comes at it the same way. But maybe we do back up a little bit, because I think many people use the term coaching and mentoring as interchangeable. And the way I describe it, and people can agree with me or disagree with me. And actually, I wrote a blog post over at philmckinney.com. So if you want to go over there, you can check it out. I actually break down the difference between coaching and mentoring. And
it is worth a read. I read it for the first time just as we were sitting here. And I learned so much. It is important to know the distinction between the two and make sure that you do have one of each.
Right. Coaching is much more of the tactical. How do you do something? Right. So, I'll get, I'll coach at an incubator or an accelerator like Unreasonable Institute or any of the other accelerators. And it tends to be much more of a coaching. It's limited time. It's 3 months, maybe 6 months. And it tends to be very, not so much, you could say it's tactical, but it's things along the lines of, someone's got a really great idea, but they've never done volume scale manufacturing of hardware, right? So they want my expertise from my years at HP, and how do you take that rough idea and coach them through the process so that they learn how to actually take something on the back of a napkin sitting in a bar and actually turn it into a real product or something that can be delivered. In the case of mentoring, it tends to go on for years. In the case of Bob Davis, he became my mentor in 1981, right? And he's been my mentor since then. So it's been for all my kids, through my grandkids. And it's more about, that even though it's in his case, it really was around business mentoring, it turns into life mentoring. Finding someone that has kind of the same philosophy of life and, work-life balance and role of the family. They're helping you think through prioritizations and big, major career choices. Of how do I, if I want to achieve X, how do I get from point A to point B and make those decisions? And what's really important on the coaching or mentoring side, though, is you're not looking for someone to give you the answer.
Right. And when I went through Stanford's they had an innovation program and how to create a startup and a new venture creation program. And the first matter of business was to teach people, they called it coaching, but now in talking to you, it was more of mentoring. And they taught us how to mentor. And it was all about asking the right questions. And if you ask the right questions, you will get the right answers, because the right answers are always within you. And you have to really believe that.
And this gets back to a little bit, and for those of you who've been longtime listeners of the show, it's going to sound like a broken record, right? But the importance of asking the right questions. Because I can answer you a very closed-in question. Do you like pizza? Yes or no? That doesn't help you reveal. No. It's more really about those open-ended questions and wording them in such a way that they cause you to have to kind of dig into areas of your life that you just never look at yourself, right?
Right.
You either avoid it or something you just haven't even considered to look at. You look like you're stressful. Why? What did you do right before you came in here that was that raised your stress level? Or you were frustrated at something. Dig in, figure out what was it that triggered those types of things.
And it's really important that with the right mentor, you are going to feel good looking for those answers within you. Mm-hmm. If it's the wrong mentor, their questions are going to cause you to clench your hands. They're going to cause resistance within your body that you may not realize at first. You may think, well, this person's a mentor to all these great people, so of course I need to go with them. And what I'm feeling has to be wrong because I'm feeling this way, and they have to be asking me the right questions.
Yeah, you're kind of that person that you like to you go for that gut feel.
Yeah.
Does it drive that stress? Do I feel uncomfortable, or is this more of an enlightenment? I'm looking at this in a new area, and I'm excited about what this is revealing versus I'm doing something wrong, so therefore I need to go do something right, and you feel stressed or guilted into doing something different because, Tim Ferriss does it, so therefore I must do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I like those people.
Nothing against Tim Ferriss, but I can't exercise like he does.
I don't think anyone can. But I think it's really important with a mentor that you choose, that you end up choosing a mentor that gets you to see a new perspective that feels good for you.
Right.
I think that's a real key.
Right. And it is important to find the right one. It's not about, hey, this person's is a mentor or coach to the stars, therefore they're the best one, or they've got 2 million followers, this person has 10,000 followers. It is really about finding that mutual match.
Someone who inspires you, someone who sparks you to do things you never thought you could.
Right. And really that's the role. It isn't your mentor coach is not playing your psychologist. No. You're not going in laying on the couch, and trying to resolve childhood issues. It's really around how do they help propel you for longer term success.
Who gives you the most aha moments in a conversation?
Right. So we're going to take another quick commercial break here. When we come back, we're going to pick up this conversation on coaching and mentoring. Kim's been doing coaching and mentoring for a number of years. I have. And you've actually been doing some coaching and mentoring with women as far as helping build confidence and public speaking. So when we come back, I want to talk specifically to some of the work that you've been doing in that area. So when we come back, we're going to pick this up, talking about coaching and mentoring and career success. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Before we jump back into the show, I want to thank our sponsor today. As you probably, say, hold on here, Phil. It's 12 years of the show, and you've never had a sponsor. And you'd be absolutely correct. This is a first. I'll explain why in a minute. So, one of the reasons that I'm actually even taking on a sponsor is really in response to a common request I get from listeners, which is they've got this really great idea, but they need help in taking that idea and really turning it into a game-changing innovation. Now, we've all gone off and tried those outsourcing sites, put those projects up there. You try to find somebody. I don't know about you, but I've had no success. The result of that has just been always disappointing. Our sponsor today, TopTal, however, is different. For starters, they screen every technical and design expert that applies, and not just for technical skills. They also screen for communication and personality. The result is only 3% of those that apply get accepted. You're guaranteed that every person working on your project is on the A team. Companies using TopTal range from the large multinationals like Pfizer and JP Morgan, all the way down to startups like Airbnb and Zendesk. And for listeners of Killer Innovations, you can try TopTal at zero risk. You start a project, and if within the first 2 weeks you don't believe that they're just absolutely killing it, you get 100% of your money back. Plus, you get to keep the deliverables. So go over to toptal.com/Phil and start your project. Or better yet, drop me a note at phil@killerinnovations.com, and I'll make a personal introduction over to the team at TopTal so that you get the VIP treatment. So why am I allowing TopTal to sponsor this episode? First, my mission is to equip you with the knowledge, skills, and tools to take your idea and make it a reality. And having access to top talent is absolutely critical, and it's hard to do. And I like TopTal. I've checked them out. I've met with the CEO. I've met with their team. I've talked to their customers. I've talked to their technical talent, and they're all top-notch. Now, second, taking on a sponsor helps me cover the cost of producing the show. I've been funding the show myself for 12 years, and by accepting a sponsor, it allows me to put more funds into the nonprofits I support, which are hackingautism.org and PioneerNet Education. This isn't about making money. 100% of the monies we receive, including the author royalties for my book, go to charity. So what are you waiting for? As I've said 1,000 times on this show, ideas without execution are a hobby, and true innovators are not in the hobby business. So hop on over to toptal.com/Phil, start your project, or again, better yet, drop me a note, and I'll make that personal introduction so that you get the VIP treatment. And look, who doesn't like a little extra TLC? So let's go on with the show. So Kim, we were talking about coaching and mentoring in the last segment. And as I mentioned, as we were going to commercial break, you actually do, you have a number of programs where you've been mentoring women, even young girls.
Right.
As part of the program. Tell us a little bit about some of the coaching and mentoring you've been doing.
So when I ended up winning an Emmy, I got noticed by several people in the Miss America program, Miss California program in particular. There's a difference between Miss USA and Miss America. Miss America is the scholarship program. And they asked me if I would help out at a local level with the girls, helping them to learn how to communicate effectively. And not only that, helping them to learn how to formulate their own opinions about what's happening in the world around them. And so I've been working actually since, I would say, 2003, 2004. They just gave me a badge for celebrating 10 years with them. Because what I love about working with them is that these are girls between the ages of 13 and 24, and they're committed and they're driven, and they spend time preparing for their interview. And I really like that I'm not just preparing them for the interview for the program, I'm preparing them for life. Because how many times, particularly even with the current election, do you talk to people and you find that they are saying that they're choosing a particular candidate, but they don't have a substantial, a real fundamental reason why they're voting for them. So what I try and do with these young women is I help them to learn to formulate their own opinions about what's happening in the world. And it's all about teaching them to draw upon the facts of the story, the facts of the case, the facts of the issue, the fact of the matter, and then their own personal experience because no one can argue with your own personal experience, and taking those two and pulling them together to formulate their own opinions.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You put out a call for young girls on your Facebook page.
Right.
You were looking for this a couple months ago, I guess it was, that you posted up on it. And I thought it was just interesting, given we particularly here in Silicon Valley, where we do have a significant gender problem,
right,
in executive ranks and in executive roles, and people somewhat stick their head in the sand and aren't dealing with the issues. And when I was at HP, we had a program where we would take junior high and high school girls and put them through consistent summer internship programs to expose them to science and technologies. And actually it had amazing effect just from confidence building.
Right. It gives them conviction. And when someone feels like they have opinions that are truly, truly at their core and they can substantiate them, they're going to have confidence, and you're going to see more of these young women at the higher ranks because they have conviction, they feel good about themselves, and they're going to go a lot further. Exactly.
And this also proves the point, though, of, we talk about, in this case, the work you've done and a little bit of the work that we did when I was at HP, though, that anybody, though, can be a mentor. It doesn't, right. It's not a, you need to go to college for 4 years, you need to get a certification. But there are good mentors and there are bad mentors.
It's really about, especially with these young women, it's how do you provide them with the information they need to develop a well-informed opinion. And it's about asking them the right questions that show no bias. And that's the toughest thing to do. And every single time I work with one of these girls, I have to be so careful in how I strategically ask the questions. And this goes with anyone who's a mentor or a coach. How do you ask the right questions to get them to really think about what's at their core? It's okay, and you have to make it okay, that their opinion is different than yours. That's what makes America great.
Right.
I love a diverse group of friends that makes me think about things differently and actually appreciate them because they have a different opinion.
Exactly. And you and I have had this conversation multiple times about, given particularly the political environment here in the U.S. this election season, about running into people because, they vote for person A because they hate person B, versus, do you really understand the issues? Do you really understand what, how does that person align or not align with your thinking? Are you willing to put the effort? We're turning into a little bit of a lazy society.
Yep. And a bad mentor is literally only going to ask you those questions that's going to get you to align with their opinion.
Exactly. And this gets back into the whole issue of, properly structured questions. There's a whole range of questions we call leading questions, right? So these are the questions that I'm both convincing myself that I'm doing the right thing by asking the question, but by how you word the question, you're leading them to your own belief, right? Kind of an easy, funny example is leading question from a boss that comes in and says, "So, we're going to make that blue, right?"
Oh, exactly.
And so,
happens way too often.
We all hate candidate A, don't you? It's one of those issues of those kinds of leading questions. And coaching and mentoring is not about, instructing and telling someone what to do. It's helping them discover their own beliefs, their own opinions, their own view on what they should do for their success, what's going to make them happy, what's going to make them satisfied when they achieve something at the other end.
Yep. And the right mentor is going to get you to actually go against usually the masses. They're going to get you to think differently and discover something new, and that's the only place where true innovation comes from.
Exactly. And it's because otherwise you get into this herd mentality where I'm just going to follow the group. I'm going to, I don't know how many Uber-like companies, right? Come up with something different. Don't be the 12th Uber,
exactly.
The new startup that's going out there trying to raise, venture funds, or the 10th Airbnb-like company. If you're truly going to be a true innovator, you've got to break out. You don't want to be following the mass in a certain direction. You need to be kind of that counter person to go off and try something different.
Right. And when you find that right mentor that helps you to discover that true purpose in your life and that true gem that you have, there really is no one in competition with you.
Exactly. So when we come back, we're going to take another quick commercial break here. We come back, we'll talk a little bit more about how do you go find a good mentor? What's the actual kind of step process that you should go through when thinking about locating, testing, and working with a coach or a mentor? So stay right there. We're going to be right back after this short commercial break.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. This is your host, Phil McKinney. We are picking up in this last segment. We were talking about mentors and coaches. And one of the challenges, though, is there's lots of mentors and coaches. You go out onto Facebook or Google, just search the term to find a good coach or mentor. And you literally, or go on LinkedIn and you get thousands of them. So let's talk a little bit about how do you go find one? How do you go select one?
I think that first off, the biggest mistake people make is they say, just because, let's say, Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook and it became successful, that he's a good coach or he's a good mentor. And that's not always the case.
Exactly. Yeah.
Some people do, and not taking away from him, and I'm not even using him as an example of that, but there are some people that just end up with a lucky break, lucky idea. And it doesn't mean that their experience is going to resonate with you and be in the way that they share their advice and things like that. That may not be the best way for you to take your company.
Exactly. And then, like in many cases, there just seems to be this kind of almost idolatry almost of successful entrepreneurs, right? So if someone was successful in A, then they're automatically going to be successful at B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, right? Which is not the case, particularly for those that, come right out of school, come up with one idea, hit it, get successful. They've only had one experience. And they've only had one positive experience, right? I tell you, in my case, the fact that I did 12 startups before I got to number 13, lucky 13 for me, where I got to, take the company. We started it, 5 of us. We took it public and did quite successful with it. But it's the experience of having lived through hell in the first 12, of having them, blow out underneath you, that you learn what not to do in many cases.
And that could be the difference as well. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. A difference between coaching, coach and a mentor is a coach. Those who can't do can't coach. Yeah. Those who can't do may still be a good mentor, though.
Right. Coaching, and this gets into a little bit of, innovation coaching, right? So specifically helping individuals take an idea and turn it into something successful. Or an individual coming in to help coach a team or coaching a company around innovation. I just have a hard time understanding how someone can come in and coach who's never done an idea and actually been successful at launching a new product or a new idea.
Although Vivek Ranadive, the founder of TIBCO Corporation, a data analytics software company, who went on to he's now an owner of the Sacramento Kings NBA basketball team. He ended up, even though he had never played basketball before, he was so analytical and he just understood the plays. He coached his daughter's high school basketball team, I think it was high school, clear to a national championship with a full court press. He analyzed tons and tons of games and he was able to coach them to victory.
Yeah, and it's not always the same thing from the standpoint of that it's all one way, or you always have to have these kinds of experiences, right? If you look at startup companies, started from a kid out of college who has no experience, you would have skipped over Google, you would have skipped over Facebook, you would have skipped over a lot of the big companies, So you got to be careful about doing the all or never, right?
Right.
It really is about finding the right person
for you.
For you. And as you were sharing you go with kind of that, that gut check.
I do.
From the standpoint. For me, I don't have a very good gut check, right? In fact, I found over the years I'm not a good reader of people. You know, my little secret weapon if I'm hiring somebody, you know, when I was in the early stages of my startups and all that, I bring candidates to dinner with my wife.
Interesting.
She is an unbelievable, impeccable ability to read people and to understand if they're playing a game, are they sincere? You know, I'm a little tone deaf to that. And so for me, I just happened to luck in with Bob Davis as my mentor, and he's my mentor he's been my mentor for 30 years.
But here's the gut check: is what he tells you actually feels good for you. It feels right for you.
It felt scary. Doesn't mean it's not scary.
Doesn't mean it's not scary.
Yeah, it doesn't mean
it's
not scary. But I mean, you know, right out of the gate, he put together a mentoring program for me where I rotated every 6 months into completely different roles. So I was a software engineer, but I spent 6 months in finance. I spent 6 months on the field selling. I spent 6 months, in the IT department. I spent, me, sales guy, knocking on doors, trying to hit sales quota. Let me tell you, I've got an appreciation for sales guys. But that was that well-rounded. What his focus is for long-term success. You can't achieve that just being a hardcore software engineer. You need to be well-rounded. And rather than just theoretically talking about it and maybe spending a little bit of time on it, it's like, no, your job is for the next 6 months is you're going to do X. And that's your only job. You're no longer doing software. You're out doing, having that different kind of experience. So it is putting you into uncomfortable positions. Mm-hmm. But after I went through the first couple and saw how much that transformed my perspective on making decisions on products I was building, it was just totally transformative. Totally.
It's truly the right person is the one that's going to drive you. And my suggestion to people is always go out on Facebook, go out on Twitter, ask friends, who are the greatest coaches? Who are the greatest mentors out there? Who's had an impact on them? Get all of those phone numbers from those people. Figure out a scenario that you're having trouble with and do a consultation with each one of those coaches and see which one feels the best for you.
In this case, at least most of the coaches I've ever talked to or mentors I've talked to, they're more than willing to get on the phone with you for 30 minutes or even an hour,
right?
And allow you, no charge, and allow you to have that kind of a conversation to see whether or not it fits.
But what I notice also is that a lot of mentors actually are people that you are already confiding in that you may not even realize.
Right. It's the hidden mentors.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting. In many cases, it's not those that call themselves professional mentors. You want to find somebody who is well aligned with you and who can, in many cases, you almost have to talk them into being your mentor because they don't think of themselves as mentors. It's really the value component that they deliver.
And one more point really quickly from me is that make sure that your phone call is less about you venting and something that's more productive and solution oriented. That's also because someone who lets you just sit there and vent the whole time, they're not a mentor.
Yep. Perfect. Hey, Kim, thanks a lot for taking the time out to come over here and join us on the show. Appreciate that. Check out the show notes, killerinnovations.com. You can also check out the blog post on mentoring and coaching over at Phil McKinney. And with that, we'll talk to you next Sunday here at Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.